Good evening, and welcome to the Connecticut Department of Transportation's Public Information Meeting for project number 126-176, rehabilitation of bridge number 571A, Route 8 over the Housatonic River, Route 110, Riverdale Avenue and Hull Street, and the town of Shelton and city of Derby. It is also known as the Commodore Hull Bridge. My name is Michelle Lynch, and I'm a project manager with the Connecticut Department of Transportation. I would like to welcome everyone who's taken the time to tune in for tonight's presentation. We hope this will be informative and we are able to answer any questions and concerns so you'll have a better understanding of the project. Before I get into the presentation and introduce the project team, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items and explain tonight's format. Our presentation will last approximately 40 minutes, and once it's completed, we'll host a live question and answer session. You will have three means of communicating with us during the live Q&A session. You can send an email, leave a voicemail, or if you're watching this on MS Teams, you can post your question in the chat field to the right of your screen. The project team will monitor the project email, phone, and chat periodically during the presentation and Q&A session. The questions asked by any of these means will be posted to the MS Teams Q&A chat window. We will read all the questions out loud for the project team to answer. You can ask questions at any time during the presentation, but all questions will be answered during the live Q&A session. For those of you that are joining this presentation via Microsoft Teams, there is an option to view captions or subtitles. To turn on this feature, select the CC button at the bottom right corner of your screen. This turns on the captioning. Next, to choose the language, go to the settings wheel next to the CC button. Select Captions/Subtitles, and then pick the desired language. Available languages are English, Spanish, Polish, and Portuguese. As I mentioned, there are three means of communicating with the project team. Email, which is dot126-176@ct.gov, telephone 860-944-1111, include the project number 126-176 in your message, and if you joined us by MS Teams Live, you can also use the chat function, which I will explain on the next slide. A recording of tonight's entire presentation, including the Q&A session, will be stored on the project webpage. The webpage can be found at portal.ct.gov/DOT Shelton Derby 126-176. Lastly, please remember that you can ask questions or provide comments through January 27th via either email or telephone. The MS Teams chat function is only available during tonight's live Q&A session. For those of you joining us through the MS Teams live chat event, there's a chat function available that allows you to ask questions and communicate with us. In this format, you can ask a question by clicking on the little question mark, which is Show Q&A. This will bring up your live event Q&A field. This is shown in the picture on the right of the slide. Select the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen, and a field will pop up where you can type your question and then hit either Enter or the little arrow button to send. You can also check the box at the bottom to post your question anonymously if you prefer. There will be a slight delay, but eventually your question will appear in the featured section with all the other questions asked tonight. Please remember that the MS Teams chat function is only available during the live Q&A session tonight. Thank you for bearing with me while I went over the ground rules. I would now like to begin the presentation by introducing the project team. From the Connecticut Department of Transportation, we have Bart Sweeney, the Division Chief of Bridges. His photo is in the top left of your screen. To the right of him is Timothy Fields, Principal Engineer from the Major Bridge Unit. My photo is next. My name is Michelle Lynch, and I am a Transportation Supervising Engineer from the Major Bridge Unit. Next is Jessica Carvajal, the Project Engineer, also from the Major Bridge Unit. AECOM is the department's designer on this project. The photo in the lower left is Andre St. Germain, the project manager. Next to him is Beatrice Hunt, a principal hydraulic engineer, and next to her is Ryan Aponovich, the environmental permitting lead. You will hear from Andre later this evening as he explains the proposed project. We would like you to know that no person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project, and that there is a civil rights flyer available. We would also greatly appreciate if you could fill out the voluntary post-meeting survey the department has through SurveyMonkey. The results of the survey will help us improve these public meetings going forward. The links to both the civil rights flyer and the survey are located on the previously mentioned project webpage. A recording of the formal presentation will be posted to YouTube after the live event. Closed captioning, including non-English translation options, will be available at that time. At this time, I'll turn the presentation over to Andre St. Germain from AECOM.
Hey, thanks, Michelle, and good evening to everyone tuning in. My name is Andre St. Germain. I'm the project manager for AECOM. We are the engineer of record on behalf of the Connecticut DOT. Tonight, I'll be giving a presentation showcasing the rehabilitation of the Commodore Bridge, which is Connecticut DOT project number 126-176. We're currently in the preliminary design phase of the project. Specifically, the project is for installing scour countermeasures at Piers 9 and 10 within the Housatonic River. I'll explain what this means as we go through the presentation. At the conclusion of the presentation, we'll open it up for questions and answers. I'll start with a quick location map. The Commodore Bridge carries Route 8 over the Housatonic River between Derby and Shelton. The project location is marked with a red circle in the figure. Before we really jump in, I'd like to first spend some time defining some key components of a bridge. A bridge is made up of two main components, the superstructure and the substructure. The superstructure consists of parapets, deck, and load-carrying members such as steel girders or steel trusses. The substructure acts as the foundation for the bridge, supporting the loads from the superstructure and transmitting those loads into the ground. Only the bridge's substructure piers will be addressed in this project. The bridge parapets, deck, superstructure, and substructure abutments will not be impacted. I'd also like to define a key term, scour. Scour is the erosion of streambed or bank material due to flowing water. When scour occurs around a bridge pier, it can result in instability. So oftentimes countermeasures are installed around the pier for protection against this. I'll cycle through a few photos of the existing bridge. The first photo is an elevation view looking west. Pier 9 is the taller pier in the river. Pier 10 is the shorter pier in the river. This photo shows the bridge from the opposite direction, looking east. This is a photo taken from Shelton, looking north at Pier 9 in the river. And this is a photo taken from Derby. Pier 10 is closest, with Pier 9 in the background. Now I'll discuss the existing bridge and the purpose and need for the project. The bridge was originally constructed in 1951 and widened in 1990. There are three main truss spans over the river. As I mentioned before, Piers 9 and 10 are within the river. The substructure piers are reinforced concrete on steel piles into bedrock. Construction of Project 126-170 was completed in 2019, which involved steel repairs and painting of the steel truss superstructure and installation of a scour monitoring system. This project extended the design life of the superstructure an additional 25 plus years. Now this project, Project 126-176, is addressing the substructures. Routine underwater inspections are performed every 2 to 4 years. The results here at the bridge show history of scour at Piers 9 and 10. The 2020 underwater inspection report indicated a scour rating of 5, which corresponds to fair. However, the upstream face of Pier 9 has a scour hole with exposed steel piles. A recent scour prediction evaluation found that scour countermeasures are warranted for the protection of the foundations of Piers 9 and 10. We performed a scour analysis per Federal Highway Administration guidelines, which predicts the riverbed will scour all the way to bedrock under the storm event studied. We also performed a pier stability analysis to determine the critical scour elevation at which the piers would not perform adequately, which are shown as red lines. Since the predicted scour is below the critical scour elevation, scour countermeasures are warranted for this bridge as a preventative measure. We investigated several different alternatives for the scour countermeasures. The preferred alternative are precast concrete armor units, or otherwise known as precast concrete jacks. These are six-legged precast units typically installed as bundles, which interlock together, and it's this interlocking pattern that prevents movement and protects the riverbed. This alternative has a lower construction cost than other alternatives studied. They're quick to install, they require only minimal excavation of the existing riverbed, and they perform well and require minimal maintenance. Here are a few photos of precast concrete jacks being installed on other projects. The jacks are picked up by a crane in a bundle, dropped into the water, and guided into place with the assistance of scuba divers. Here's a quick look at the preliminary footprints. Shelton is over on the left and Derby is on the right. Pier 9 is on the left and Pier 10 is on the right. The footprint size is a function of predicted scour depth, water angle of attack, and pier geometry. Pier 10 has a larger footprint than Pier 9 because bedrock is deeper. And since the analysis predicts scour to bedrock, the predicted scour depth is greater. Here's a figure looking at elevation view of Pier 10. Pier 9 would be similar. The precast jacks are 2 feet tall. They would generally follow the profile of the existing riverbed. They perform best when they are buried halfway, so they would require about 1 foot of excavation into the existing riverbed, and in the final condition, the jacks would be exposed 1 foot above the existing riverbed. Here's a figure looking at an elevation view of the upstream end of Pier 9, where we have the existing scour hole with exposed steel piles. Here, we'd address the scour hole by first adding grout bags around the hole, then filling the hole with grout, before filling in the area with riverbed material, and then finally placing the precast jacks on top of that, which is similar to the other locations. We've investigated constructability and construction access. The construction will be completed using barges. There's a boat launch owned by Connecticut DOT directly below the bridge, as shown in the photo on the left. However, access is too tight here to launch the barges. This area could be used to stage other equipment and materials, which I'll discuss in just a bit. There's also a public boat launch known as the Sunnyside Boat Ramp in Shelton, which is a couple miles downstream of the bridge. This is a possibility to launch the barges. However, after discussing with multiple contractors, it's more likely that the barges will be floated in from Long Island Sound. The river is relatively shallow in the vicinity of the bridge, so we looked at the feasibility of using barges first. Water depth is measured during the routine underwater bridge inspections. The 2 figures shown are taken from the latest underwater bridge inspection report. Pier 9 is shown on the left and Pier 10 is on the right. Areas marked in red indicate it's too shallow for barge use during low tide. Everywhere else has adequate water depth, even during low tide. So this area to the north of Pier 10, near the Derby shoreline, a temporary trestle or platform will be used instead of barges. We anticipate 2 barges will be required to perform the work. 1 barge will be used to perform the 1 foot of riverbed excavation. The other barge will be used for the placement of the precast jacks. Traditional barges may be used similar to the photo on top, only on a smaller scale. Or alternatively, the contractor may elect to use floating modular platforms like the photo shown on the bottom. We've also investigated possible staging and stockpile locations for equipment and materials. One potential location is in the parking lot below the bridge on the Derby side. This parking lot was used as a staging area for the previous project, 126-170. Access and parking to the Derby Greenway would be maintained at all times. Another option is the area highlighted in red on the Shelton side. However, this area is less desirable because of the tree line that separates this area from the river. There are several environmental permits that will be required for this project, which are listed on this slide. Most notably, there's a time of year restriction by Connecticut Deep Fisheries that only allows work from October 1st through March 30th. So this work will be done over the winter when there's limited recreational boating taking place. Aside from Connecticut Deep permits, there will also be U.S. Army Corps permits, United States Coast Guard coordination, and Connecticut Deep Boating Division coordination. Currently, we're at the tail end of the preliminary design phase. After this, we'll move into final design, which is expected to take a little over a year. It's expected that the project will be advertised to contractors in May of 2023. A contractor will then be selected and construction will begin October 1st, 2023. It's estimated that it'll take 3 months to complete each pier for a total of 6 months, which puts us right at March 30th, 2024 as a completion date. The estimated construction cost is right around $8 million for this project, which is made up of 80% federal funds and 20% state funds. There is no municipal funding for this project. Here's the contact information for Michelle Lynch of Connecticut DOT and myself, Andre St. Germain of AECOM. We'll now open up the presentation for questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. This concludes the formal presentation portion of tonight's meeting. Thank you for your time and attention. As I mentioned, there are 3 means of communicating with the project team. Email, which is dotproject126-176@ct.gov. Telephone, 860-944-1111. Please include the project number, 126-176, in your message. And if you joined us using MS Teams Live, you can use the chat function previously explained. If you're joining us on YouTube, a link to the web page is located in the project description. You can find the email address on the web page. A recording of tonight's entire presentation, including the Q&A session, will be stored on the project web page. The web page can be found at portal.ct.gov/DOT Shelton Derby 126-176. Lastly, please remember you can ask questions or provide comments through January 27, 2022, via either email or telephone. The MS Team chat function is only available during tonight's live Q&A session. We'll now begin the live Q&A session. All questions will be posted to the MS Teams Q&A chat field. To view the questions, click the Featured tab on the live event MS Teams Q&A. All questions submitted tonight will be read aloud and receive a verbal response. I see we have our first question, which is, are there any traffic impacts and will there be a detour? Andre, if you'd like to answer.
Yes, I'm happy to answer. There will not be any traffic impacts as a result of this project. All of the work on the project will actually occur below the bridge within the river. There will likely be a staging area for the contractor equipment and materials below the bridge on the Derby side. I'll flip to that slide now. This area here, however, parking will be maintained at all times and access to the Derby Greenway will be maintained at all times. This is the same area that was used for that previous project, 126-170, which was completed in 2019. There will also be some impacts to recreational boating during construction. There will be 2 barges with construction equipment within the river. However, these impacts are expected to be minor because construction is occurring over the winter, so there's likely going to be limited recreational boating going on during that time.
Thank you, Andre. I see we have another question. It's how is the project funded? So I can take that. The estimated cost for the project is $8 million, and it is funded 80% federal and 20% state. There's no municipal contribution to that. And as Andre stated earlier, construction should begin in October of 2023 and be completed by March of 2024. As I mentioned before, there are several ways to submit your questions. You can send it via email, which is dotproject126-176@ct.gov. You can also phone 860-944-1111. You can leave a voicemail. Just make sure you include our project number 126-176 in your message. If you're joining us on MS Teams, you can use the chat function to ask questions. And anyone on YouTube, links to our webpage and also the survey are located in the project description. You just need to click on Show More and the links will appear. At this point, I see we have another question, and it is the existing bridge safe to use? So, Andre?
Yes, good question. This bridge is absolutely safe to use. Every 2 years, the bridge undergoes a hands-on inspection of both the superstructure and substructure, and it's given a rating. The rating scale goes from best to worst. It goes good, satisfactory, fair, poor, serious, and critical. This bridge is rated as satisfactory, so that's pretty good. The bridge also undergoes an underwater inspection every 2 years. The underwater inspection reports show a history of scouring, but even still, you can see from one of the earlier slides that I'll go to now, the existing riverbed is nowhere near this critical scour line. So the purpose of this project is to add scour countermeasures around the pier, really just as a preventative measure to prevent the riverbed from scouring further during some potential major storm events in the future.
Thank you, Andre. I see we have another question. What happens if the river floods during construction? I think B is going to take that one.
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. The Connecticut standard specs require the contractor to develop a flood contingency plan. That would be reviewed by and approved by both the state and AECOM. It will include protocols for the protection of the construction site and also for the tie-offs and relocation of equipment before and during any floods. Thank you.
Thank you, B. Again, we're here to take your questions. Just want you to know also that if you think of a question late after the presentation, the email and phone line will both be available to you until January 27th. Again, email dotproject126-176@ct.gov, and our phone number is 860-944-1111. Also, I encourage you to fill out our voluntary post-meeting survey. It's available. There's a link, I believe, in the chat field as well as on the web page, and that will assist us in making these presentations, improving our presentations as needed. I see we have another question up. And will construction or the final condition countermeasures affect fishing or wildlife? I think Ryan is going to take that one.
Sure, Michelle. The countermeasures are not anticipated to significantly impact fishing or wildlife. As Andre mentioned, as part of the project design process, permits will be secured from the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Through this permitting effort, the coordination will take into account impacts to state fish and wildlife programs to avoid and minimize any permanent impacts to the habitat that is currently present on site, and to hopefully make a better habitat when we're done.
Thank you, Ryan. again, we will take your questions. Our email and phone will be open again until you'll have 2 weeks. We'll be checking those for the next 2 weeks for any questions that you might have. And we will get those into our reported meeting as needed. If you're joining us on MS Teams, you can use the chat function tonight. YouTube, also you can just use the link to get to the web page. Our email and phone number is available there. I see we have another question, and it's, is there any contamination in the soil at the bridge? And I believe Ryan is going to respond to that.
Yes, Michelle, I can answer that question. As part of the early geotechnical investigations for the project, soil borings were obtained, and some of the material from those borings was retained to test for contaminants. The results of those tests indicated that there were no significant contaminants of concern, but there were low levels of semi-volatile organic compounds. Because of this, specifications will be developed as part of the project design, which will govern how the material should be handled. Any material that will need to be disposed of off-site will be stockpiled at a nearby location and tested again for contaminants prior to trucking it off-site. Material will be disposed of at a facility that's licensed to handle whatever the level of contamination might be that is identified during the on-site testing of the stockpiles.
Thank you, Ryan. Looks like we have another question in. What happens if construction is not finished by March 30th, 2024? And I think Ryan is going to answer that one.
Absolutely, I'll take that one as well. As part of the contractor's responsibilities during construction, they will be required to provide a schedule that conforms with the time of year restrictions that were mentioned earlier in the presentation. The schedule will be evaluated throughout construction, and if unforeseen delays cause work to extend past the March 30th deadline, the contractor and CTDOT will coordinate with state and federal fisheries staff to determine what might be necessary to mitigate any impacts to those resources and to the time of year restriction, to allow the remaining work to continue and to be completed on schedule.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll probably be wrapping up shortly. Just a reminder, our email, dotproject126176@ct.gov. Phone 860-944-1111. Just make sure you include the project number in your message. And the MS Teams chat is available tonight. We also encourage you to fill out our survey that's on our webpage, which is portal.ct.gov/DOT Shelton Derby 126-176. I see we have another question, which is, will construction affect recreational boating or industry that uses the navigation channel? And I think Andre is going to respond to that.
Yep, I'm happy to respond to that. So given the shallow nature of the waters and also the dam just right upstream, there's not a whole lot of industry that uses the navigation channel here. But we do expect some impact to recreational boating. However, like I mentioned, since construction will be taking place during winter, we do expect those impacts to be minor. During construction, I should note again, there will be 2 barges within the river. There are 2 spans that are deep enough for boating. One span is between Pier 8 and Pier 9. That's actually where the designated U.S. Coast Guard navigation channel is. However, the span between Pier 9 and Pier 10 is also deep enough to support vessel traffic. So during construction, if one of those spans is blocked, the other one will be completely open.
Thanks, Andre. It looks like we're gonna kind of wrap things up. So we'll give you a minute or two to submit your questions. Again, You can send them in via email or phone. Those lines will be open until January 27th. Email dotproject161176@ct.gov. Phone is 860-944-1111. Just include the project number in your message. So I'd like to thank everyone for participating in tonight's public information meeting. We hope you found it to be informative. A recording of tonight's entire presentation, including the Q&A session, will be stored on the project webpage. A report of meeting will also be posted with all the questions and responses. The webpage can be found at portal.ct.gov/DOT Shelton Derby 126-176. Again, our email and phone will be available for your comments until January 27th. I also encourage you to participate in our brief survey. The link is also on the project webpage. Again, thanks for your attention and have a great evening.